Hello, upper cervical doctors and students. Welcome back to the UCM podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Davis, your host for today. And on the podcast today is Dr. Justin Brown. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Dr. Davis, thanks so much for the opportunity to share with your awesome audience. Anytime I get a chance to share to upper cervical docs around the world, it's always an honor. So thank you for the honor to share.
Absolutely. So, you've been on the podcast before, Doc, but I just want to give you an opportunity. Just introduce yourself to the audience again if they haven't heard you, and tell us a little bit about where you are right now with the practice. What's going on with your specific practice in South Florida there.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit about myself. Ended up finding upper cervical. It really helped me significantly overcome severe chronic fatigue. So I found Nuka while I was actually in school. And so I really kind of never did anything else. So full upper cervical. Now going on, Bill, believe it or not, 20 years. 20 years. So I went to Palmer College in Iowa. And then I trained in Seattle, Washington with Dr. Lee Yardley a couple years. And then I set up in South Florida back in 2008, January 2008 on my own. Since that time, yeah, we've just grown and trained over 30 associates now. And we've had 3 practices. We did buy and sell practices, and we're getting back into some acquisitions, some partnerships now. But we do have a 5-doctor office currently, seeing roughly 500 a week. And, really we're on track to do 2.2 this year. So we do quite a bit in revenue and really just build a preeminent brand. So that is our style of practice, is preeminence and creating an extremely high value for the services that we're providing, while making it really affordable for those that understand the value of what we provide as upper cervical docs, and really just do a great job of helping create the world's healthiest families. That's the visions, create the world's healthiest families, and provide tremendous amount of value to these people, be advocates, partnering with these people to help them get the most out of their life and health. So that's our vision. And I have a tremendous passion for building wealthy chiropractors and healthy people. And, I think upper cervical is the very best way to do that. And so we're now, really transitioning into partnering with practices. I think, based on some previous, if you listen to any of the previous calls that or podcasts that I've done with Dr. Bill, that we've done some coaching, and I've done that for years, almost 10 years of that. But what we'd rather do now is partner, where we can really make a bigger difference inside these practices and inside these communities, as opposed to me providing some insight or giving some feedback. And, maybe some things get done, maybe some things integrate, maybe some things don't, or get implemented rather. What we want to do now is we actually want to really partner with those practices where we're now, their skin in the game, and we're both really on the same team. And we get to de-stress some of the burdens of what it is to be not just an upper cervical doc, but an entrepreneur and a business person and an HR director and someone who understands accounting and finances and tax strategy and marketing and all these pieces and all these elements that go into trying to build something really special. We want to help partner and de-stress these practices and these docs so that they can really fall back in love with practicing chiropractic. And we know that, when people can get focused on the thing that they're best at, which is typically really serving people and giving great corrections and clearing brain stems and reuniting people to their innate source, then that tends to be when we're most fulfilled and we're most rewarded, and we tend to be most effective. So we have a whole entire system that's been really put together over the last 2 years that allows for this to happen. So Serve Bigger Collective is what we're currently working on, where we are partnering with practices for the partners, the success partners that it makes sense for. that fit a criterion. And it's certainly not for everybody. We're not looking for everybody, but we are looking for the right partners that kind of know they're made for more and want to come together to really shift our position, Bill, not just in chiropractic, but in healthcare. I talk to people and they're like, Bill, I'm curious, like, do you really feel like upper cervical has significantly changed or moved the needle in the healthcare horizon in the last 20 years?
Unfortunately not. No.
Not too much, right? Not too much.
No.
But that's on us. I think we keep on looking for people. Okay, who's going to do that? Who's going to be the next person to do that? Who's going to do it? But the truth is, Bill, I mean, you're doing your part. I mean, you really are. I mean, nothing existed like upper cervical marketing before you. Like you're the pioneer.
Yeah. Right.
And, nothing's really existed where someone has said, you know what, we are better than what we are representing in the market. We are. We're just better than what we currently represent. And we have to get strategic and we have to come together in order to join forces, bring big brains together, leverage each other's strengths and be able to actually move that needle. And I just don't think we can do it alone. I know I can't do it alone. I don't think there's anybody out there that can do it alone. I think the only way we can really do it is by coming together.
So, I wanted to get into this more because I think it's a really important topic. And this, the Serve Bigger Collective, which is what you've recently started, Justin, is really interesting to me because something that we see a lot with doctors is they don't really have a plan when it comes to what's going to happen with their practice over time, right? So many times, at the beginning, especially when you first start your practice, it's just about keeping the doors open, right? And then over time, it's about, okay, let me try to help as many people as possible in my community. And then maybe I want to train some other doctors or not. There's still probably 75% of all upper cervical practices are solo practices, meaning no associates in the practice. And so in so many of those practices, from what we see, they just don't, nothing happens to them. They don't even transition to another doctor in most occasions. And so I wanted to talk about that, like with what you're doing now and the vision that you have, how are you thinking about, helping doctors to have a more solidified plan for transition, for leaving a legacy, for, exiting their practice in a way that is actually for the good of their community that they've been serving all these years, and also for the good of upper cervical in general.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned it. I mean, it's such a problem. What a tragedy when you see a doc build something over a lifetime, right? Blood, sweat, and tears, many sleepless nights, massive passion and purpose and integrity inside of, serving a community, and then essentially have nothing to show for it at the end of a career.
Yeah.
Which it's a tragedy. And a lot of times you'll see that, there has not been, in my opinion, a good role model on this. I think people have a plan, Bill. I think their plan is to have a really good month followed by a good year. That's the plan. I mean, that's really the plan. When I talk to chiros and I say, hey, what's your ultimate plan? It's just deer in headlights. Like, I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah.
So, and the truth be told is that most individual practices are very flimsy and vulnerable. Any, one single event can really rock, those practices. And that's just the truth of it. I mean, most people don't like to necessarily address that or acknowledge that is the truth, but that is the truth. It could be many different life events that can literally create the end of a practice, whether it's been around for 5 years or it's been around for 35 years. That's the reality of it. And so what we know is that most people really don't have a really strong foundation and no real backup plan. And it's important. It is important to have. So, we wanted to really change that. I've seen my own mentors go go through this, and tragedies have left their spouses in bad situations. These practices that even very successful practices, Bill, top
Yep.
1% practices. So here's what happens: practices that are kind of doing under like 300 to even 500,000 in revenue, they have about 1.5 times earnings valuation, and that's if you have the right person at the right place at the right time that does exactly your technique. That's the value of it. Okay,
Right.
but the likelihood of that isn't high. Let's just say what it is. If you're in that 500 to 1 million mark, there is a bit more value. Once you're 1 million plus, you almost are in this no man's land where your practice is too big. It doesn't carry the value that you think it does. And so, Bill, I'm kind of interested. Have you heard people say that? Has that been the case where people are surprised that their practice doesn't carry the value they thought it had?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you get into a situation where it becomes much more difficult to find a buyer, right?
To find a buyer.
Right. Because like you said, the 500 to $1 million mark, you have a lot higher percentage of people that can purchase that.
Yeah.
Right. But once you get to that million, I mean, most of the doctors who could purchase $1 million practice already have $1 million practice, right? Like it's right. And they don't want to purchase another one in another location, right?
You're right.
So who's going to, a student coming out of school is not going to be able to afford that. Right.
Well, even if they got finance for it, let's just say they had a family situation where they could get finance for it.
Sure. Yep.
Do you think that person is equipped to come in and run that practice?
No,
they're going to take that $1 million practice and they're going to
turn it into a $500,000 practice.
They're going to, if they're lucky, it'll become a $300,000 practice within about a year. And so that's the issue. And so the issue is that there's really not a good system in place for either people coming in or people going out. And so we're not necessarily looking for people that want to stop practicing or retire. We're looking for people that they have a strong practice, right? That they're in that 400 to 500 revenue, all the way up to maybe 1.5 million revenue. And they're doing really well, but they just realize that they're kind of at this point where like, this is it. Like, it's kind of going to be the same way over and over again until basically something happens, or I just can't do this anymore, or my body breaks down. Right? Is that true? I mean, people's bodies do break down at doing this work. So there's really no plan. And then what I'm hearing from a lot of these chiros is that I go, I almost feel trapped. I love chiropractic. I love doing what I do. I love serving people with chiropractic, but I almost feel trapped inside the walls of my practice. And these people that are so-called business owners feel like their business owns them. And they don't really have a true pathway to be able to be rewarded for the efforts that they've done, nor leave a legacy, like really leave a legacy and make sure that these people are taken care of and that their kids are going to get this unbelievable quality of care, and be able to have something that you can be proud of that will outlive you. So that's really what we've done, is we've created a pathway to be able to do that, by looking at people that are doing well. But they want to integrate, they want to partner, they want to leverage best practices. They don't want to guess anymore. They don't want to, try to find the answers to how to best run their practice, on YouTube. They'd much rather say, oh, this person's doing this really, really well, and this person's doing this really, really well. And, Justin's built one of the largest upper cervical practices in the world, probably has some things to say about that. And to be able to consolidate and bring those ideas together, systematize, professionalize, optimize, and automate, and be able to do that in a way where, through our partnership, our integration, and then ultimately our acceleration, really skyrocket the value of these practices, build real enterprise value. And kind of getting back to my point, a lot of practices are in this no man's land of having really no enterprise value. And then having very little value or not being sellable. A lot of people are building these businesses that are unsellable.
Right.
So they fall in this strange area where, people are sort of naive to the fact that they have these practices, which can be really good and really profitable and really lucrative and be making a big impact in the community, but they are very vulnerable. And so we're solving a lot of problems with that, creating real benefits where, employees are incentivized. We can actually attain and retain real talent. We can use the economy of scale and bring down some of our fees so that, the regular fees that we're all incurring month in, month out, by consolidating, coming together using economy of scale, we can actually leverage some of these vendors and be able to reduce our fees and increase our profits without really changing anything else. So it's great. And what we're doing is we're giving free autonomy to these chiros to practice the style of practice that they want to practice, for them to make their own clinical decisions, for them to, in all intents and purposes, run and operate that practice, but then also be able to run it a lot more smoothly, a lot more efficiently, and deburden these chiros from some of the admin aspects of practice, accounting, bookkeeping, legal, insurance, HR, all the things that kind of bog people down, bog the chiros down from doing what they love, which is, serving people.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about, so many practices not being sellable, right? Let's talk about that more. Like what are some of those things that, makes it so a practice can't be sold? What's some of the things that you've seen that hold practices back from being sellable, and how can the Serve Bigger Collective help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one thing, if it's a one doctor office, right, and if you want to sell that practice, you're basically selling a job.
Yeah,
you're selling a job, and I know people aren't typically too interested in buying a job. So essentially, if the more valuable you are to that practice, the less valuable your practice is. Meaning, if you're responsible for 100% of the revenues, then you're basically transitioning that over to somebody else to then have to generate those same exact revenues without necessarily having the track record of relationships with those people, which is tricky, which is very tricky.
And we call that a treadmill practice, right? If you're on the treadmill, it's going. If you're not, it's not, right? So that's it.
Correct.
It's completely depend on your personality. It depends
Correct.
on your effort, your energy, and what is someone really buying?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one piece. If there aren't, operationally, if there aren't strong systems in place, if there's not a strong playbook, if there's not, standard operating procedures, if there's not some type of a meeting rhythm where there's some level of roles and responsibilities with KPIs attached to those, with some level of accountability system, with some, level of vision that entire team is behind. What's the quality of the team? Are they A players, B players, C players? What's been the track record with those people? What's the turnover rate? What's the accounting processes, the bookkeeping processes? What's the profitability? What's the profit margin? How apt are they on, what's going on relative to a marketing standpoint? Are we, tracking our cost per acquisition, our ROAS? Is there, how dependent are we on any one source for business? Is it 100% referral? Well, someone say, look, I don't even do marketing. I'm 100% referral. Okay. Which means basically you are responsible for 100% of the people that come in. So if you want to go on a vacation for 2 weeks, you have 0 new patients.
Right.
Okay. And that's going to mean your practice is extremely dependent on you. So just looking at really having single points of failure, the less single points of failure you have inside of your business, the stronger of a business it is. So there's a lot of things, obviously, as I get into it, that you could look at, but the quality of the tech stack, certainly the quality of the predictability of revenue, right? The predictability of revenue is really key. Is it practice on the upswing or the downswing? People try to sell practices when, they're year over year losing 10% revenue, 10% profit, 20% profit. And that's someone who's getting tired, and maybe their best years are behind them. And so they hold on too long, right? It's the Brett Favre effect, and their stock goes down, right?
Yeah.
The stock just keeps going down. And people, they need to know, and, timing is important when you look at valuation. So Bill, it's a great question. I didn't get too deep into the weeds there, But
No, but I hear what you're saying, right? I mean, it really comes down to, you know, do you have
a
do you have
business.
a personality dependent practice, or do you have a system, right? Because if you have a system, a practice system, then somebody can buy that practice system and keep it going, right? But if it's completely built on you, then it it's completely built on you, right? And if you go away, then there's no practice. And
There's no
so,
practice.
yeah, I mean, so it's and that's, you know, what we've been talking about for 12 years really is the importance of, you know, getting out of this treadmill practice, right? And bringing on, you know, the first step obviously is to bring on an associate, begin to teach somebody else what you know, begin to systematize things so somebody else can do it, not just you, all those kinds of things. But we still have so many doctors that won't even take that step, right? Like
Well,
they're
Bill,
still
I
stuck in
mean,
that solo practice mindset.
well, and I agree with you. And are you equipped to bring on an associate? Because, you know, I just had another conversation with a chiro this week, and he's like, we brought an associate, and boy, that didn't work. That was a
Yeah,
real pain. So, you
right.
know, are you equipped to do it? And maybe you're not. So, and that's okay. And I think it's, you know, first know thyself. You know, maybe that's not your strong suit. Maybe your strength is being a world-class chiro. Like your zone of genius is being hands-on, and maybe not being someone who's leading and developing and training and you know, being a you know, an advisor to that person, and you know, understanding the intricacies of what that person wants and their vision for their life, and figuring out a pathway to suit that person's unique skills and gifts and vision. You know, like that's a whole job in of itself.
Yeah.
That's really what I do now, is like I lead and develop chiros. I mean, that's really my main. I see patients, you know, 4 hours a week, because I just don't want to ever lose touch with putting hands on and knowing what it is to practice in 2025. But at the same time, um, my entire mission is building and leading and developing chiros, and partnering with chiros that are made for more, and that understand the bigness of the vision, and want to be a part of something that really does move the needle. So I think, yes, you're right. We want to get chiros to hire other chiros and lead and mentor and develop and pay it forward, right? Like pay it
Yeah.
forward, Bill. Like you and I both have a lot of mentors, you know, and we're smart enough to know that, man, we don't have this all figured out. But I think that they got it successful enough where they can pay a chiro well, right? So
Yep.
stop taking advantage of associates, start paying people properly, right? So that's the first bit. Like, how do I get successful enough to even hire my first associate? Second, if I don't want to do that, if that's not my strength, you know, what can I do to make a bigger difference? Well, talk to somebody that can do that really well and partner with people. I'm certainly not the only person that has done that. There are others that are doing that, but partner with somebody that really is good at that, because that'll make a difference and de-stress you and make you a lot happier in the end. But then really also looking at, if you are to, you know, bring that associate in, you know, what's the dynamic? The dynamic changes. You know, are you there? Do you onboard them properly? Do you have clinical training in place? Do you have business training in place? You know, are you willing to put in the meeting cycles that are necessary? You know, how do you hold that person accountable? What if they're underperforming? How do you hold them accountable to that? Do you fire them? Do you lead them? Do you develop them? Like, there's so many different aspects that go into that entire process. And I think some people get excited about that, and other people go, man, that's just not for me. I don't want to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's a big problem, right? That there is a lot of people who either don't want to do it or aren't equipped to do it, right? One of the two, and then they just stay in solo practice. And so with what you guys are doing with Serve Bigger, you know, are you able to help someone who is in solo practice, and if so, how do you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, yeah, even a couple of the people that it looks like we're moving forward with are in solo practice, and for them, it's a godsend. It's a blessing, because they're saying, well, like, I can just practice chiropractic, So what we're able to do for them is through our process of the partnership and the integration, we're going to accelerate that practice to the point where the revenues support an associate, and we can actually backfill and bring an associate in to that practice, and then it stabilizes and solidifies that business and builds the strength of its foundation. It's going to provide vacation time. It's going to provide a team environment. It's going to provide someone to bounce ideas off of. I mean, by the way, the patient is at the forefront of all of this. I can guarantee you when there's multiple doctors inside of a practice, that patient's going to get a better quality of care.
Yep.
You've got multiple eyes looking at CBCTs or looking at films, working down different cases, looking at, unique conditions that may come in and bouncing ideas off of each other, being able to address and talk about the different challenges that, upper cervical docs face, every single week in practice. So really be able to build that team inside, and amongst other benefits. I mean, there's so many other benefits that come into play, but yeah, long answer to your short question, which is absolutely solo practitioners are certainly people that we want to serve. We want to help with the Serve Bigger Collective. And not all of them, we're also, deep in talks with people that have, multiple docs inside of them, but certainly this is a great solution for those solo practitioners.
Okay, great. So, if somebody's interested in this, they want to find out more about the Serve Bigger Collective, what's the best way for them to do that, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways. The number one is they can go to servebigger.com and you can check out our site and learn a little bit more. And then what we do is if you fill out the form online, we just set up a call and no obligation, just have a discussion and find out where you're at. And some of you might go, gosh, I haven't even thought about this. I'm not in that phase where I'm thinking about this. Perfect. This is why we're talking about it now, because this isn't something that we're, looking to have anything drastic changes to your operations of your practice. This is for people that want to continue practicing. This isn't really for people that want to be out or want to get out of chiropractic, or that's not the kind of people we're looking for. We're looking for people that really love chiropractic. They're passionate about chiropractic. They get the big idea, but they also see this vision of, gosh, I just, I want to change the world with upper cervical care. And although I'm making an impact in my community, maybe it's not the size of impact that I feel really, really great about. So it's those kind of people. But that would be it. You can connect with me on Instagram, Dr. Justin Brown, Facebook, email, any of those are perfectly fine. And even reach out to me directly through a direct message. And I'd be happy to connect with you, talk with you, and just share the vision a little deeper, answer questions about, well, I kind of get it high level, but how does it really work? We could discuss those type of things as well. But yeah, it's got to be a win-win. Our entire model is predicated on the docs feeling great about how it works, Bill. Like the deals have to be great on both ends. And the whole model is predicated around that. And, we are providing, very high salaries, to these docs with incentives. So all the incentives are aligned towards growth because we want people to grow with us. So this isn't where, you sacrifice for the next 5 or 7 years, reducing significantly your income and just hoping that things work out at the end. That's not it. It's really significant salaries. Some of them are hard for me to swallow, but that's just the way it works. And if you have a great practice, you should be rewarded heavily for it and be incentivized heavily for future growth. And that's the way we structure it. So we really do want to have, awesome docs jump on board, and we will have 10 practices by the end of the year. And we're selective. So this, again, like I said, it's not for everybody. Everybody won't qualify, but for the practices that do qualify, it makes sense to talk to us early because just the nature of how this works, there's greater equity and upside for early adopters. So the sooner you kind of speak to us, if you have a strong practice, the more upside is in it for you. So just, that take that for what it's worth.
Cool. Yeah. So if you're interested in this, if you have, if you're at that level, 500,000 up, basically, with your annual collections, reach out Serve Bigger. Go to servebigger.com, find out more about it. Check in there with Justin, sign up, get the form, and hopefully it'll be a good win for you and your practice. And, because we want upper cervical to grow. We want it to be something that is making a bigger impact in the world. And I think that this is a good way to do that. So thank you again, Justin, man. Appreciate you being on the podcast once again, and go team Upper Cervical.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's an honor, man. And I love what you do. Thanks so much for supporting the upper cervical world. What you're doing makes a difference. I appreciate you.
Thanks, bud.